Everybody. Well, first of all, I guess I need to say hi, everybody. Welcome. Today is October the 4th, 2023. I am breaking with my normal kind of content because I'm in amazement and I like mysteries, right? And so I think this is curious and mysterious. And I just wondered what a bunch of non-political people would think, right? So let me share this. Hold on just a minute and let me get it up on the screen. So this is talking about like the whole removal of the Speaker of the House by this group of 8. And look, it is complicated, and I'm not going to get into the politics and talk about who I think is right and who I think is wrong, because none of that matters. That's not what I'm intrigued by. I'm incredibly intrigued by the reaction of, I guess, should I say news people, mainstream media type people. I'm a pretty old lady. I was raised during a period of time where we were pretty well taught that journalists, they don't really have opinions, that they're not printing their opinions, that they are supposed to just report just the facts of the story, and not try to sway the reader to one direction or the other, right? That was what was being taught when I was a kid. And so I still hold on to that idea. I think we have fewer and fewer of that type of media. It seems like most media now are, corporate. They have a goal. I think they're ideologues that are trying to sway people. This is my opinion, to try to believe one thing or another. And so, I find this very interesting. This is curious. This is so curious. So, this is a really historical thing that has happened. The removal of the Speaker of the House, who is actually third in line to the presidency. So it's an incredibly powerful position just in its own right. There was Joe Biden, and then Kamala Harris, and then Kevin McCarthy. So it's a very powerful position. And only one other time in history, I think, if I remember correctly, they reported that there was only one other time in history where somebody attempted to remove the Speaker of the House and it failed. But this go around turned out to be really fascinating. It actually survived. What you're looking at on the screen is, or I may have, here it is. What you're looking at on the screen here is, it's showing you ultimately the number of Republicans that wanted to get rid of McCarthy, and then the number of Democrats that sided with the Republicans, right? So it was a total of 216 votes to get rid of him. And so even though Republicans do hold they are the majority in the House, they didn't have enough votes to go up against all the Democrats and 8 Republicans. And so ultimately McCarthy was removed, right? Isn't it interesting? Listen to this. It's crazy. Isn't it interesting that we find out today that Nancy Pelosi, Queen of the Democrats, that Nancy Pelosi, it was moved out of her office this morning. Listen how crazy this is. She was moved out of her office this morning. Turns out that Nancy Pelosi actually had an office in the Capitol building which is generally really only reserved for leadership, which would be the House Speaker, maybe the majority minority whip, but always these really really powerful positions, right? So how in the world did Nancy Pelosi keep her office in the Capitol? That's very odd, right? Everybody's buzzing about this. This is like a weird thing. Turns out that McCarthy made a deal with Nancy Pelosi that if the Democrats would have his back, protect him from being removed by the Republicans, then he would allow her to keep her cushy office directly in the Capitol building where she has a position of honor and power, right? And she, I mean, her history, she definitely has earned that. But the protocol, the reality is that she's no longer in a leadership position, right? So it's just so weird to me. It's so crazy to think that this guy, this whole country is so divided, left against right. And the Republicans are really, really divided between the what they're calling hardline right wing, Trump support, and then what they are calling themselves moderate or even middle of the road Republican, which is really the establishment, right? So it's so funny to me that he gets this support from so many really people that put themselves forward as being like ultra conservative and Republican, and he gets the support and he promises all these great things that he's going to do to try to help the right get a little bit more balance into the country. And as he's doing that, he's making deals with Nancy Pelosi for the Democrats to save him. It's so off the wall for me. Like, I can't wrap my head around it. I know it's just so, it's an obscure thing in this big story. If you're watching the news and you're listening to the political podcast, it's a fairly obscure. I mean, people are outraged that Pelosi had that office there in the Capitol, not being in a leadership position. But not many people are talking about the reality that McCarthy makes these promises. He's one these very powerful far right wing people support him, and he gets off the phone with them, gets off the phone from the Freedom Caucus, and then contacts Nancy Pelosi and says, listen, Nancy, I'm going to need you to do me a big favor here. Okay. So I'm just going to talk and pretend that things are going to change, but that's going to make a lot of these guys really mad. So you think you could help me out a little? And Pelosi's like, well, yeah, I mean, the Democrats will do whatever I tell them to do. I'm the queen of the Democrats. And so how about you let me get my very lucrative office in the Capitol building? Help me keep that, because that's money in my pocket after all. And I'll make sure that you always have just enough Democrats to keep you in the speaker chair. Right? That was actually happening. And we know that today because the minute that McCarthy was out last night, McHenry this morning told Nancy Pelosi, you got 8 hours to get your office packed and you get out of here. Send her to some, high rise regular building down the road where, the junior freshman senators and representatives are. So it's, my God, it's just so dramatic. It's crazy. It's like the rats jumping off the ship, isn't it? Okay, now that's not really what brought me to this point of I want to see what everybody thinks about this. Okay, so I'm gonna play a clip of Brian Kilmeade. If you know who Brian Kilmeade is, put a 1 in the chat. If you do not know who Brian Kilmeade is, put a 2. Yeah, I don't want to talk about politics. Like, I don't want to talk about left versus right or anything like that. This is something else. This is different. I mean, it's definitely been highlighted because of the political upheaval, But okay, so Cinnamon's going, Brian Kilmeade, who? All right. Brian Kilmeade is a favorite morning talk show host on Fox News. He also hosts a 4-hour radio show for Fox News in the afternoon. And he did, in fact, get his foot in the door. His claim to fame is because he was a sports broadcaster, analyst, I guess you could say. Okay, so that gives you an idea of who he is. Not really a mental giant, not like genius level, but funny personality. People like him, I guess. So that's who he is, right? Okay, so he's one of the brain. Brian is on Fox and Friends. Thank you, sweet tea. Okay, so this is a news guy, right? Now, I don't mean that he's an investigative journalist, hardline, reporting. I know it's entertainment. It's they call themselves entertainment. Sometimes they call themselves a talk show. I recognize that, but still, wouldn't you think if you are doing a morning show or you're doing an afternoon radio podcast, don't you think that you should still probably be like reporting the news, right? Or at least trying to discuss the situation and the things that occurred? Well, just take a look at this. This is the I'm telling you, I don't know what to make of this. This is weird to me. So let's see. Okay. So Brian Kilmeade is actually interviewing one of the 8 that basically brought down Kevin McCarthy, the 3rd most powerful office in the country. He did it. This is kind of funny too, because we're talking about, you push one little domino and what happens to all the other dominoes. Right? So listen to this. So McCarthy gets fired. McHenry, who is acting speaker, he goes in this morning and tells Pelosi, get your crap packed and out of here. You got 8 hours. We want you out, gone, no more in the Capitol. You're finished. You're washed up. Get out. Your little friend McCarthy, go. We don't want you here. Right? So that happens. And last night, when they did the vote, or yesterday when they did the vote, it was Hakeem Jeffries. You got to have a lot of respect for this guy, sincerely. You really do. Hakeem Jeffries, at the last minute, he says to the Democrats, his party, he says, you got to do what you believe. We got to quit all this game playing, and I respect that so much, right? And so what ended up happening, rather than playing this ugly, hateful political game that has really, I think, ended up with our country struggling so badly, the Democrats, they bowed out. They said, yeah, we're not going to help them. We're not going to hurt them. Let's let them sink or swim. And I'm going to vote my heart. And so the Democrats stood true to their ideals. And they voted the way they wanted to vote, rather than the way their leadership told them or forced them to vote. McCarthy was holding money for Republicans that were not willing to vote on bills that they did not have time to read. He would basically say to them, listen, I'm not giving you extra time. You vote yes, because I'm telling you to vote yes, even though you don't know what's in the bill. And if you want any reelection money, you better do what I say, because if you don't do what I say, I'm not going to give you any of the donations that have been made, for reelection. That's why you see Matt Gaetz saying, I don't care if you don't give me any money for my reelection. I'm happy to take my chances with the $10 or $20 donations from individual Americans, rather than being held hostage by Kevin McCarthy dangling that money in front of my face and forcing me to go back on what I promised my constituents. So, it's very interesting. It's fascinating that we are watching this thing sort of crumble to pieces. And I think McCarthy was in complete and total shock, and maybe Nancy Pelosi was in shock that the Democrats voted their conscience. They voted their political beliefs, and they refused to save him. And I think it was just, I think all these old alliances and games that have been being played, I think they've been blown up now, and it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens. But you guys know how I feel about mainstream media. I want to look at the way Brian Kilmeade, a hardened news guy, right? Very experienced, right? Let's see how he handles this. I'm sure all he wants to do in this interview is just try to dig a little deeper, find out what the issues were from one of the 8 that voted with the Democrats. I'm sure that was his goal of this, right? So let's see what happens. It's crazy.
They have thrown Kevin McCarthy overboard. Our next guest is one of those GOP members who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. Congressman Tim Burchett joins us now. Congressman, you were one of the 8. So Speaker McCarthy had 96% approval rating, but that wasn't good enough for you. Do you feel good?
What? Brian, that was a terrible misstatement of the statistics. Although you are a sports guy, not a math genius, but still, you're coming out of the gates just a little bit confrontational. You might want to tone it down a little. So this is Burchett, this American citizen, a representative who has reasons to do something that was so historically egregious that it's never been done before. And listen now, Kilmeade addresses Burchett rather than trying to get to the source of like what went wrong, how do we make things better moving forward. Listen to this. This is the weirdest thing I've ever witnessed.
What about your vote?
Well, I don't know about 96%.
Well, they
I think you
voted
need to
for
ask the people. Well, I don't work for the people in Congress. I work for the people of the 2nd District of Tennessee. And overwhelmingly, the folks are tired of the fact that we take in $5 trillion and we spend $7 trillion, that your leadership continues to pass these continuation resolutions. They push us right up against a holiday. Well, guess what? The 45-day one is pushed right up against it. We took off 6 weeks this summer. From August to, we usually just take off August, but they decided to take over 2 more weeks. And I feel like that's a failure of leadership. They're the ones who set the schedule. So he's the speaker. Right. Ultimately, the buck stops somewhere, and diverting the attention somewhere else, I think, is just wrong.
So you realize this is the first time in history that this has been done. So you're upset about 6 weeks in the summer. Did you call him during the summer and say, can we get back to?
You know, Brian, that was one of the oldest tricks in the book, to not have to have any knowledge, but to just pick some little obscure thing that the person you're arguing with says and restate what they said. He never said that they voted to oust Kevin McCarthy because they took 6 weeks off. That is not what he said. You completely mistook or misstated what he did say. And so far, you've interrupted this guy 4 times.
To work?
I'm also upset at the fact we're $33 trillion in debt.
Is that
and
Kevin
the value
McCarthy's
of the dollar.
fault?
That would be 5 times he's been interrupted.
It could be. He needs to accept some responsibility.
Didn't he have an 8%?
6 times he's been interrupted.
Cut offered over that in that continuing resolution bill?
And the rate of growth, but you're not looking at the 33 trillion. And that's really just peanuts compared to the 33 trillion that we've run up. You know, we continue. If you look at the bills that we did pass, the appropriations, the one that had the cut was the agriculture bill, and it didn't pass because the Republicans sided with Democrats. But yet the defense bill, which had
7 times.
Wait a minute. The defense bill that had $30 billion new dollars in the Pentagon, which has never passed an audit, which has lost at one time 60% of their assets. We reward them with $30 billion more dollars so the war pimps at the Pentagon can spread more war around the globe.
So because he didn't audit the Pentagon, and get
No.
every appropriation bill done, you're going to make
Look,
history by ousting him to move your agenda forward. Here's what Kevin McCarthy said about you.
9 times he's interrupted this guy so far. 9 times. He's also misstated what the guy is trying to say. He has not asked one question that would lead to understanding. What he is doing is arguing like he is a jealous sibling, arguing with the older brother. That's what this is weird. The reaction that Brian Kilmeade is having is as if someone came in and told him, hey, Burchett is having sex with your wife, Brian Kilmeade. The guy that you're fixing to interview on television is actually in an affair with your wife. And that's the way he's behaving on that personal, deep level. Instead of, wow, you guys really did something crazy and historic. Why? Like, teach us. Like, what? How do we understand your actions? Because it's so strange to us. Teach us more. This is the most personal assault that I've ever seen on television, what is supposed to be some form of news. The morning after this vote, and this is what we get? A jealous little kid fighting about who's going to sit in the front seat of the car. It's really strange. I want you to listen to what Burchett said, though. He said that while they gave not just what the Department of Defense asked for in terms of keeping the same amount of funding, but they added additional billions on top of it. And at the same time that they added this additional, just huge amount of cash, they cut the money going to American farmers. So that's one of the things that Burchett is angry about. Do you think he has a right to be angry? That after we abandoned the women in Afghanistan, the women that were beginning to really enter society and hold positions of like doctors and attorneys, that we just walk out and now they're back to living like, biblical times, right? Many of them were executed in the streets. If they had gotten educated, they're now dead, right? We just walked out, left them. Why? So we could then go into Ukraine and kill some more people in Ukraine. We add money to them after spending billions sending to Ukraine, but we take away the small amount of subsidies that we give to American farmers? Why was that okay for a Republican to want to cut? Why would a Republican want to harm our food industry, but then just dump cash on the war machine? So I get this guy's frustration. Brian Kilmeade just looks like a goon.
I personally like Tim Burchett, and I called Tim Burchett because I read his quote. And Tim Burchett's a friend of mine, which I'm kind of shocked by this.
He's not really your friend, McCarthy. That's just a game that you guys play. Oh, my good friend across the aisle, my good friend here, my good friend there. You didn't treat him like a very good friend.
And Tim Burchett, in his quote, said he's leaning towards no, he's on CNN, but I'm going to pray about it. So I pick up the phone and call him because I didn't think he was already there. I said, Tim, I read your quote. You said you're going to pray about it. I wanted to talk to you about it. And somehow he construes that I'm a Christian. I'm not going to offend somebody. I simply read his quote back. I thought there was still an opening, and I wanted to talk to him about it. He never mentioned anything when we were communicating like that.
You liar.
So you said part of the reason you voted like that is because you felt he was mocking you, correct? So it's personal.
And that's not accurate. And that's any of that. I asked him about the 6 weeks off. I asked him about why we didn't have a term limits bill up, and continued on down the line. And it was always not his fault. Leadership has responsibilities. The buck stops somewhere. And in the House of Representatives, it stops and starts at the Speaker's office. And clearly that's not happening. And clearly, you don't want to continue to make excuses for him. But the truth is his approval rating around the country was not very high. And
Well-
I don't represent the people of Congress.
I
I
know.
represent the people in Tennessee.
I got it. What do you think is going to do for the Republican Party and chances of holding on to leadership and the majority when it looks like you're the ringleader of a circus led by Matt Gaetz, who likes to blow things up but not offer any new ideas? Are you?
Well, the question that I have about this is, he said he attacked Burchett and said, oh, well, that sounds personal. That sounds like you voted against McCarthy because he made a joke about you praying about your decision. So that sounds personal. Are y'all getting the feeling that this is personal to Kilmeade? I can't understand why Kilmeade is so dramatically emotional and really being, offensive to the guests that he brought on the show to interview.
You happy following Matt Gaetz? Is that your leader?
I'm not following Matt Gaetz. I made my own decision. I didn't ask Matt.
But if Matt
for his
Gaetz didn't
approval.
challenge, you wouldn't going to
And don't forget, we're now at about interruption number 14 or 15.
challenge.
Do what?
If Matt Gaetz
No.
didn't stand up, you weren't going to challenge. You know that.
I believe I would have.
Oh, come on.
Oh, well,
Please,
you
pray.
I'll tell you what this looks like to me. This looks like to me, yeah, he did call him the ringleader of a circus, Katie. Absolutely. I mean, the offensive way that this guy is speaking to an elected representative it's awful. It's terrible. But I'll tell you what he seems like he is to me. He seems like he's sort of like the enforcer, right? I don't mean like breaking your, well, maybe he does break knees. I don't know. But when I talk about the enforcer, I mean this. It's like, okay, so you went against the establishment. You went against the machine. You went against the unity party, the one party rule. And now you have to be punished. Now we have to make an example out of you. We have to teach you, as the powerful mainstream media, we have to teach you that if you have the audacity to go against what we want, what our messaging is, regardless of whether it's left wing or right wing, that if you go against the established narrative by the big guys, then we will make an example out of you. Like we will say that your $1 billion property is only worth 18 million, and then we will prosecute you. Even though all loans have been paid back, not a single bank has said, oh, there's not fraud or there is fraud or whatever. We're still going to go against Constitution and law, and we're going to railroad you through the court. You'll ultimately win in the end, but in the meantime, you are going to go broke. We are going to fiscally, financially destroy you to make an example out of you so that you never go up against us again. And in some ways, Burchett is experiencing that same corrective action. And this time, instead of it being a judge, this time it's a mainstream media talk show host who, for some weird reason, is motivated to attack this guy and try to make an example out of him to the other congressmen and women. If you do this to us again, you will get the same treatment. If you do this again, when you come on, we will destroy your reputation, make you look stupid, make fun of you, remove your dignity from you, and then we'll never invite you back to our show again. So you better be careful. Are you going to follow some joker like Matt Gaetz? Or are you going to follow Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi and the people that we, the media, tell you are the ones to follow? And Burchett, is standing his ground. He's going, hold on a minute. I'm not following any of those guys up there. I'm following the people that elected me. I'm going to do what is important to them. And in Tennessee, it's important that our agricultural industry remains funded because that's food on the tables of Americans. That's milk for formula for American children. You see my point? This Kilmeade is so personal and vicious in this interview and it defies explanation. It goes way beyond his role as just a talk show guy. This is the weirdest thing I've seen. It's like someone has told him, get Burchett, make him look stupid, make an example out of him, and I don't know, maybe we'll give you your own show, Brian Kilmeade.
Saying about it 1 minute, the next minute you're going to lead an insurgency?
So you don't think
we're
that
back.
saying about it's important?
And now we're back to the insurgency word. Now we're using that word again. Golly, man.
Is that what you're saying?
One minute you're praying about how you're going to vote with Matt Gaetz. And the next minute you're going to lead an insurgency?
Listen, you got a predetermined answer to everything. I
have an opinion about what's going on. Do you have an opinion too?
And you talk over me every time I try to make a point.
All right, make your point.
The point is that we're $33 trillion in debt. This speaker was woefully lacking in leadership skills. He always placed the blame somewhere else. America is going to be better off with new leadership. And that's the bottom line.
And who is it?
It possibly could be Steve Scalise. It could be Elise Stefanik. It could be Roger Williams out of Texas.
I hope it's not Elise Stefanik.
Mark Green out of Tennessee.
So they all supported Kevin McCarthy, including the most conservative guy I know, Jim Jordan. Why are you smarter than Jim Jordan and the 210 plus Republicans? Why are you smarter?
I represent my district, brother. And why are you smarter than me? You're condemning me because I stand up on my own, and that's
I'm not
what
condemning you. I'm questioning you. You don't like being questioned?
The line of questioning is very negative, and you know that, and I know that.
It's aggressive.
And when this is all over with, and we have a new speaker and we're running smooth, let's have this conversation again.
Were you happy with John Boehner?
I wasn't here with John Boehner.
Right. John Boehner was Barack Obama's best friend.
They're both rhinos. I mean, they're not in my camp anyway. So I wasn't here when they were here.
So you had 15 yeses for every round you voted for Kevin McCarthy, but you think he's the problem?
Right now, I sure do. He's part of it. He's part of this whole problem. When you deny that there's a problem, in this dysfunctional Washington, brother, then you know there's a problem. You can't get past a problem. You can't get past the fact we take in $5 trillion, we spend $7 trillion, and leadership seem to be okay with that.
I'm fascinated the way you blame Kevin.
You hear how he will not let Burchett keep talking, and if you watch Kilmeade's eyes, you can see when they're talking to him in his ear. You can see him avert his gaze like he's listening, and then he interrupts.
McCarthy, that you're $33 trillion in debt, but you're going to get a new leader. I'm sure he's going to solve everything.
Well, I'm surprised that you give him full credit for all the successes that we've had, because
all I could say is for 9 months, I don't think you should take all the blame.
Well, why are we backing it up? We had 9 months. Exactly. That's a great point. Why do we wait 9 months to do something about the wall, something about the budget, something about, we never did anything about term limits, which we promised the American public.
I watched him for an hour and 15 minutes. He was doing an awful lot, but not enough for you. Tim Burchett, Congressman, thanks so much.
Oh, man.
Kevin McCarthy overboard.
You are killing me.
Our next guest is one of those GOP members who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. Congressman Tim Burchett joins us now.
Speaker, and we're running smooth. Let's have this conversation again.
Were you happy with John Boehner?
I wasn't here with John Boehner.
Right. With Paul Ryan?
When this is all over with, and we have a new
200 and Jordan.
Okay,
why are you smarter than Jim
eyes.
Jordan and the 210 plus Republicans? Why are you smarter?
I represent my district, brother. And why are you smarter than me? You're condemning me because I stand up on my own, and that's
I'm not
what
condemning you. I'm questioning you. You don't like being questioned?
The line of questioning is very negative.
Did you see his eyes dart to the right? He's listening. Now watch him start interrupting.
And you know that, and I know that. When this is all over with, and we have a new speaker and we're running smooth, let's have this conversation again.
Were you happy with John Boehner?
I wasn't here with John Boehner.
Right. With Paul Ryan?
They're both rhinos. I mean, they're not in my camp anyway. So I wasn't here when they were here.
So you had 15 yeses for every round you voted for Kevin McCarthy, but you think he's the problem.
Right now, I sure do. He's part of it. He's part of this whole problem. When you deny that there's a problem,
See, they're talking to him again. Watch him interrupt.
when in this dysfunctional Washington, brother, then you know there's a problem. You can't
Who
get
denied
past
there's
we
a problem?
You see how childish that is? Like when he interrupts, it's not even to ask a real question. It's just this childish, immature kind of, yeah, I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I?
You can't get past the fact we take in $5 trillion, we spend $7 trillion, and and leadership
I'm
seem to be
fascinated.
okay
I'm
with
fascinated
that.
the way you blame Kevin McCarthy.
You see that? See, Burchett is talking. His interruption isn't even about what Burchett was saying. It's just a tactic to shut Burchett off, not to let people listen to his messaging because he sounds too sane, I think.
It's your $33 trillion in debt, but
Well,
you're going to
I'm
get a new
surprised.
leader. I'm sure he's going to solve everything.
Well, I'm surprised that you give him full credit for all the successes that
I
we've
don't-
had,
I don't-
because we
All
name
I
me
could
some
say is for
successes
9
we've
months,
had.
I don't think you should take all the blame.
Well, why are we backing it up? We had 9 months exactly. That's a great
They're talking to him again. Now watch his interruption.
point. Why do we wait 9 months to do something about the wall, something about the budget, something about, well, we never did anything about term limits, which
I
we
watched him
promised
for
the
an hour and
American
15
public.
minutes.
You watched him for an hour and 15 minutes? What? So you get my point here, right? This is very odd. It's so weird because this guy is supposed to be giving the news. It's just supposed to be news, but he is literally acting as if he has a personal stake in McCarthy being Speaker of the House. What could it be? What do you think it is that Brian Kilmeade is so tore up that McCarthy has lost the speaker chair? Why is he so freaked out and so personal? He must have recently watched the Pee-wee Big Adventure movie. He is a puppet whose hand is under his shirt. Nancy, that's my question. Whose voice is in his ear? Who's standing there telling him, don't let that guy talk. Stop him from talking. I don't know, but it's hard to deny, isn't it? They are ripping the RNC's puppet out. I think the Republicans are paving the way to install Trump. I can't even think about that. That is bigger than me. I can't even. The world has gone crazy. And it is one thing that is for certain, people. Me and you, those of us here on YouTube, we are the most grounded, sane people in the world right now. Is that scary or what? So this is very strange. I want to be very specific what I mean. This guy, Brian Kilmeade, is a sportscaster. Then he gets this talk show. Then he's on the, very successful morning show, Fox and Friends. Then he gets this big radio show podcast deal. Why is he taking it so personal? Why is Brian Kilmeade acting like Burchett was in bed with his wife last night? Why? This is so. Do y'all have any ideas? Why do you believe Brian Kilmeade is so personally invested in McCarthy being Speaker? What in the world is that about? Sketty Nona says he may have a personal stake in promoting an agenda. McCarthy was supposedly the big leak. Yeah, I remember that, Kelly. I remember that. Brian Kilmeade sounds like he's pissed off that he lost his leaker. Maybe you are right. Maybe Fox News is freaking out because McCarthy was the guy that was betraying the RNC. Very, very big possibility right there, because literally Brian Kilmeade is furious. If you guys think that Brian Kilmeade is acting as if he is furious, angry, put a 1. If you think this was just a normal, regular interview and all he was doing was asking questions, put a 2. Let's see where everybody stands. Hey, Jackie Blue. Remember those parties that Cawthorn got booted out of Congress for exposing? McCarthy reprimanded him personally. Seems like no one wants to lose their place on the invite list for Kev's parties. Look, I did not like at all this this speech tool that the Republicans had going on yesterday, where they would say, McCartney comes to our parties, and McCartney smiled with us and celebrated when our children were born, and Kevin comes to our birthday parties, and Kevin is our friend, and Kevin comes to our kids' birthdays. That was a massive fail, right? And that shows you what those RNC representatives think of their constituents that voted them into office. They think that we are small-minded boneheads. Oh, what a great guy. So Kevin McCarthy wished your son happy birthday? Oh, he's such a good speaker. I'm going to vote for him again. I love him. Okay, I've said it before, I'll say it again. That is the United States House of Representatives. They work to make law, and they have been given the power of the purse, meaning the things that are going on, the shenanigans that are going on in the Senate and the White House, they can't go on if they're not funded. And that's the whole point of what's happening right now, is that this group, it's more than 8, but it was 8 that voted. This group is saying, wait a minute, we're the ones that are the stopgap on the money. If we don't like the boondoggle coming out of the Senate and the White House, then all we got to do is vote to not fund it. Why do we keep funding it? And then we go on television and tell our constituents how upset we are that the United States government is $30 trillion in debt. If you're really that upset, quit voting to fund it, right? That's the whole point of what they're doing. So very interesting. And I have this other thought too. Do you think Brian Kilmeade is getting money? Do you think he's getting a little bit of money if he sort of leads his conversation toward, wow, the Kevin McCarthy is doing a great job in Congress. Just look at how he's handling the speaker's chair. We're so blessed to have him. But really what's driving that is that he's getting a little bit of a bonus pay for every story that he does like that. What do you think about that? Thomas Massey. Oh my God, Keister Bunny. Thomas Massey was freaking out, right? So Massey was nearly in tears defending McCarthy and sounded like he wanted the mean kids to just leave his friend alone. Keister, that was another one. I would not have predicted that. Massey's a constitutional Republican, or he claims to be. He says he is. And yet, why are you denying that what they're saying about McCarthy is true? It is true. I don't think it's good that we don't have a speaker in the chair. Okay, I don't think this is good. I think it's bad. In fact, I think it's so egregious. That's why it's never been done before, right? It's a bad deal. But I'm more, because I hate politics, but I'm really interested in people. I am flipping out today at these side stories. I'm flipping out about the fact that McCarthy formed an alliance with Nancy Pelosi to make way for her to have her fancy office in the Capitol, even though she's not in a leadership position. And then Hakeem Jeffries sank the knife in his back. And for all intent purposes, he sunk the knife in Pelosi's back too when he did it. So Nancy's moving out of her fancy office today. McCarthy is probably drunk by the swimming pool, if you want to know the truth. And Jordan has stepped in and said, okay, I'll run for speaker. We got another group that's calling New York saying, hey, Trump, come on, man, do it. Run for speaker. We'll totally back you. Oh my God. It's a madhouse. This is what interests me, are the side stories. The side stories that just, the human element is amazing. The way people are reacting to it, the way they're processing it is amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. It's unreal. It's unreal. So here we are. Let's see. Chicken Little says there has to be something in it for Brian. Brian is invested. This is his story. I mean, this is near and dear to old Bry's heart, but we don't know why. Let's be very careful not to, I mean, we can't attribute meaning. All we can do is just say, yeah, Brian, you seem really interested in making Burchett a example, you know. So what does this mean? Here's a question. What does this mean, this emotional display? Does this mean that they really don't have another establishment guy ready to go into the seat? Another team player? Someone that they can manipulate, pump them full of money and, you know, special interest? I don't know, but wouldn't that be interesting if that was true? So I don't know. We like true crime here, you know, but this is heating up and getting very, very interesting. Many reps have sold out to China and the lobby. Yeah, I know that that's that's sort of become like a byline. I mean, there's a lot of Chinese money that came into the Biden family, but I don't know if they all have, you know. I don't follow it enough to know. But this is pretty funny. Brian Kilmeade's emotional reactivity is so curious. It's so strange. I'm 100% for term limits. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way it is now, people can get elected and they can stay in the same office for 50 years, you know? And how is that helpful? How does that help anybody? So, yeah, I like term limits. Sweet tea says maybe it's low T. It could be low T. Brian, go get your testosterone levels checked, Bri. Okay, you'll feel better. Just do it. It's an easy test. Then you can take a shot or you can take pills. And in a few weeks, you'll be back to being your happy, studly little self. You don't have to be mad and attack old people on your show. You know, chill out, Brian. Just go get the test, Brian. You'll feel better. Okay. I truly think GOP is scared of a uniparty. I think we have a uniparty, kind of. Oh, that's what you said. I truly think the GOP is scared of a uniparty power loss. The 8-member Freedom Caucus proved that they could oust the speaker without the blessing of the uniparty. Listen, Keister, if Pelosi is persona non grata in the uniparty and McCarthy is persona non grata, and don't forget, Mitt Romney abandoned them, so he must have already known that things were fixing to turn upside down. If the uniparty is a thing of the past, is that good for America? And I don't know the answer to that. You don't know the answer to that either, but at least maybe it gives us an opportunity to get back to following the rule of law. That would be an improvement, in my opinion. Fox coverage of this historic incident was shameful. It was all fluff, no substance. They treat the American people like toddlers. DB, that was a great comment. Yep, it's a great comment. And I'm going to say this again. As nasty as Brian Kilmeade was to this elected representative, a man with a position of honor in the House of Representatives, as nasty and rude. I mean, he called him a clown, right? Brian Kilmeade had the blessings of someone powerful at Fox News, or he never would have done that. He's a little wussy boy. If you've watched him over the years, he's always followed behind. He sort of sat on the end of the couch and didn't really say much. You know, this was a different Brian Kilmeade. This was different. Someone blew him full of hot air and said, "Get him, boy. You be our pit bull. You go make an example out of that bad American." It was a disaster. Brian Kilmeade, my God in heaven, this was a disaster for you. You just made Burkett look more sane. No more career politicians. They often become self-serving. It's so sad. These seniors should be allowed to enjoy retirement, putting their end-of-life affairs in order instead of working to the casket. Mitch McConnell is scaring me to death. The poor guy is having just stroke after stroke after stroke. His poor hands are black. He needs to retire. Sincerely, he's having a serious physical breakdown of his circulatory system. His blood vessels are just popping off left and right. It's very scary. I love true crime, but what bigger true crime is there than making $200,000 a year and becoming a millionaire in less than 2 years in Congress? Congress is the only place on the planet where insider trading is legal, Kelly. And you know how they fixed our insurance, right? So that we would all have great insurance. Why didn't the Congress give up their Cadillac plans? Why weren't they forced to be on the insurance that they took over? Because now we can't even purchase a Cadillac plan. They don't even exist anymore unless you work for the United States government. He mourned out. Something drastic had to happen to force a change. We need them to fight for us. He plays with his own group of sticks and rocks and hats. You don't have to be a member of the House of Representatives to be the Speaker of the House, Kathy R. I know it's weird, but that's the way the Founding Fathers wrote it. I could become Speaker of the House if someone nominated me. Romney showed his true colors long ago. Linda, that's too weird for me to think about. I can't think of that. I just can't. Linda, I'm an old lady. It's too much for my feeble brain to deal with. I can't think of that. Kash Patel was on Nino's podcast last night, and he feels the same way. I have concerns on both sides of it. Yeah, absolutely, Keister. Yeah. I'll have to go look at that when we get done here, Keister. McCarthy's farewell speech regarding his loss of speaker position was whiny. He's always been whiny, Nancy. He's a whiny guy. His voice does not really match his presentation, does it? Like when you see him, you think when he talks, it's going to be very commanding and very powerful. And then he says this, "I'm Speaker McCarthy, and you hurt my feelings when you voted me out. I think that's really bad that you joined with all the Democrats. Why'd you do that to me?" I shouldn't mock. I shouldn't make fun. I apologize. If you love Kevin McCarthy, please forgive me. I'm sorry. China money connected to, well, I think the China money's connected to everyone. China's got money everywhere. It is true. They're in Egypt buying oil leases. China's got money everywhere. In fact, China and Kuwait often like team up together to do stuff. They got lots of beautiful money. All right. Okay, so that's it for us. Very different than our normal content topic. But tell me, did you find this interview with Brian Kilmeade? Did you find this interesting? How personal he's taken this whole thing? If you thought it was interesting, put a 1. If you thought, nah, it was dumb, let's just get back to, killers and stuff, put a 2. Brian needs to go to Jimmy's hardware store and Nancy, you are trying to get me in trouble. You are trying to get me in trouble. Okay. Okay, so a lot of people liked it. All right, good deal. .com, welcome. Hey, DB, Kelly Fitzgerald, Sweet Tea, Dory. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Hey, it's just Robbie. I know we talked. Chicken Little, welcome. All right, so I think what I'll do, I'm going to end this live. But one more time, I'm going to play the interview from the beginning. I'm not going to interrupt. And when it's over, I'm just going to end the live. Okay. So as far as we're concerned, thank you for being here. I appreciate you listening to my laughing rant, my incredulity. And if you enjoyed it, please do a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, not join the channel, but just subscribe so you get notifications when I go live. And if you have not been watching Drip Drop, you better get your hiney over there and listen to his last 2 videos because boom, they are big.
He was doing an awful lot, but not enough for you. They have thrown Kevin McCarthy overboard. Our next guest is one of those GOP members who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. Congressman Tim Burchett joins us now. Congressman, you were one of the 8. So Speaker McCarthy had 96% approval rating, but that wasn't good enough for you. Do you feel good about your vote?
Well, I don't know about 96%.
Well,
I
they
think you
voted
need to
for
ask the people. Well, I don't work for the people in Congress. I work for the people of the 2nd District of Tennessee. And overwhelmingly, the folks are tired of the fact that we take in $5 trillion and we spend $7 trillion, that your leadership continues to pass these continuation resolutions. They push us right up against a holiday. Well, guess what? The 45-day one is pushed right up against it. We took off 6 weeks this summer from August to, we usually just take off August, but they decided to take over 2 more weeks. And I feel like that's a failure of leadership. They're the ones who set the schedule. So, he's the speaker. Right. Ultimately, the buck stops somewhere, and diverting the attention somewhere else, I think, is just wrong.
So you realize this is the first time in history that this has been done. So you're upset about 6 weeks in the summer. Did you call him during the summer and say, can we get back to work?
I'm also upset at the fact we're $33 trillion in debt.
Is that
and
Kevin
the value
McCarthy's
of the dollar.
fault?
It could be. He needs to accept some responsibility.
Didn't he have an 8% cut offered over that in that continuing resolution bill?
And the rate of growth, but you're not looking at the 33 trillion, and that's really just peanuts compared to the 33 trillion that we've run up. You know, we continue. If you look at the bills that we did pass, the appropriations, the one that had the cut was the agriculture bill, and it didn't pass because the Republicans sided with Democrats. But yet the defense bill, which had, wait a minute. The defense bill that had $30 billion new dollars in the Pentagon, which has never passed an audit, which has lost at one time 60% of their assets. We reward them with $30 billion more dollars so the war pimps at the Pentagon can spread more war around the globe.
So because he didn't audit the Pentagon and get every appropriation bill done, you're going to make history by ousting him to move your agenda forward. Here's what Kevin McCarthy said about you.
I personally like Tim Burchett, and I called Tim Burchett because I read his quote. And Tim Burchett's a friend of mine, which I'm kind of shocked by this. And Tim Burchett, in his quote, said he's leaning towards no, he's on CNN, but I'm going to pray about it. So I pick up the phone and call him because I didn't think he was already there. I said, Tim, I read your quote. You said you're going to pray about it. I wanted to talk to you about it. And somehow he construes that I'm a Christian. I'm not going to offend somebody. I simply read his quote back. I thought there was still an opening, and I wanted to talk to him about it. He never mentioned anything when we were communicating like that.
So you said part of the reason you voted like that is because you felt he was mocking you, correct? So it's personal.
And that's not accurate. And that's any of that. I asked him about the 6 weeks off. I asked him about why we didn't have a term limits bill up, and continued on down the line. And it was always not his fault. You know, leadership has responsibilities. The buck stops somewhere. And in the House of Representatives, it starts at the Speaker's office. And clearly that's not happening. And clearly, you know, you don't want to continue to make excuses for him. But the truth is his approval rating around the country was not very high. And I don't represent the people of Congress. I represent the people in Tennessee.
I got it. What do you think is going to do for the Republican Party and chances of holding on to leadership in the majority when it looks like you're the ringleader of a circus led by Matt Gaetz, who likes to blow things up but not offer any new ideas. Are you happy following Matt Gaetz? Is that your leader?
I'm not following Matt Gaetz. I made my own decision. I didn't ask Matt.
But if Matt Gaetz didn't challenge, you weren't going to challenge.
Do what?
If Matt Gaetz didn't stand up, you weren't going to challenge. You know that.
I believe I would have.
Oh, come on.
Oh, well.
Please. You were praying about it 1 minute. The next minute, you're going to lead an insurgency?
So you don't think that praying about it's important? Is that what you're saying?
One minute you're praying about how you're going to vote with Matt Gaetz. And the next minute you're going to lead an insurgency?
Listen, you got a predetermined answer to everything.
I have an opinion about what's going on. Do you have an opinion too?
And you talk over me every time I try to make a point.
All right, make your point.
The point is that we're $33 trillion in debt. This speaker was woefully lacking in leadership skills. He always placed the blame somewhere else. America is going to be better off with new leadership. And that's the bottom line.
And who is it?
It possibly could be Steve Scalise. It could be Elise Stefanik. It could be Roger Williams out of Texas. It could be Mark Green out of Tennessee.
So they all supported Kevin McCarthy, including the most conservative guy I know, Jim Jordan. Why are you smarter than Jim Jordan and the 210 plus Republicans? Why are you smarter?
I represent my district, brother. And why are you smarter than me? You're condemning me because I stand up on my own, and that's
I'm not condemning you. I'm questioning you. You don't like being questioned?
The line of questioning is very negative, and you know that, and I know that. When this is all over with, and we have a new speaker and we're running smooth, let's have this conversation again.
Were you happy with John Boehner?
I wasn't here with John Boehner.
Right. With Paul Ryan?
They're both rhinos. I mean, why they're not in my camp anyway. So I wasn't here when they were here.
So you had 15 yeses for every round you voted for Kevin McCarthy, but you think he's the problem?
Right now, I sure do. He's part of it. He's part of this whole problem. When you deny that there's a problem, in this dysfunctional Washington, brother, then you know there's a problem. You can't get
Who denied there's a problem?
You can't get past the fact we take in $5 trillion, we spend $7 trillion, and leadership seem to be okay with that.
I'm fascinated the way you blame Kevin McCarthy that you're $33 trillion in debt, but you're going to get a new leader. I'm sure he's going to solve everything.
Well, I'm surprised that you give him full credit for all the successes that we've had, because
all I could say is for 9 months, I don't think you should take all the blame.
Well, why are we backing it up? We had 9 months exactly. That's a great point. Why do we wait 9 months to do something about the wall, something about the budget, something about, well, we never did anything about term limits, which we promised the American public. I watched him for an hour and 15 minutes. He was doing an awful lot, but not enough for you. Tim Burchett, Congressman, thanks so much.